on the way, and that's what we want to highlight here. First and foremost, the three things to know out the door. I consider this like a 2.5 seasons type of thing where, yeah, it's still winter, and yeah, we're going to deal with springtime feel, but also a few storms for some of us. So we run into the springtime storm season, and then behind it we have wind and fire danger. So there's a lot going on today. First and foremost, starting off with the early dense fog. Now, there are isolated storms for some, and I cannot circle this enough. I do think there's going to be more than there are going to be scattered showers, but the storm component is going to be much more isolated, where we're not as concerned about widespread severe weather. That's one of the things that we're going to highlight. Also, the wind and fire danger behind this. Let's break this down because there's a lot to talk about, and that's why you join us on the app, because we can discuss it a little bit more in more detail than just the minute, 2 minutes we have in this constraints on air sometimes. Obviously very foggy downtown. It's not as bad as it was, actually, as our current visibility still as a quarter of a mile or less in some cases. And I say not as bad. It's been near zero in Belleville. It's been at zero in St. Charles. It's been at zero or close to it in Litchfield. These numbers have come up a little bit. I do expect. Now, you also look at this from a standpoint of, hey, look at all this Jeff City, Columbia, Washmo, Rolla. You got full visibility. Why that is? Well, you can also look at temps in the mid to upper 50s, low 60s here. We see much of this around over the next several hours, and then we have 40s and 50s behind it. So we have this kind of in between here, and the reason for it is we have this dry layer of air. You'll really see this as I look at our dew points. 20s and 30s here, where you have this dry air that is on this side of the spectrum, and then mid to upper 50s here. And what we talked about when it comes to severe weather and the ingredients are in place, that's why we mentioned this is a better opportunity on the Metro East side, simply because you see more of that moisture. And that's going to be a big point of contention, where the drier air is in place here, and along the river and points east have a better opportunity for severe weather. But you also look at Rolla. This is where we have this south breeze, and that's where we're starting to see the next few hours. That will be the catalyst for some showers. I really think between 10 to 12 and then early afternoon for some of us off to the east, and then it clears out rapidly, okay? So that's where we're headed for the 70s. So let's break this down and talk about this in terms of severe weather threats for today, right? We had this wide area where we have really been unchanged, relatively speaking, at least for a good majority of our area, which is one of the reasons that we've not had the weather impact alert day. You can see that some of our areas to the west aren't even included in any severe weather threat at all. But it's also a very, very fine line, and within about 50, 60 miles, where you go from 1 to 2, and then you also run into this large area where from central Indiana and very eastern Illinois, you're involved in this severe weather threat. And when we talk about the Metro East, these are the same counties, cities that we've highlighted for a couple of days where, hey, I think this is the best opportunity for severe weather simply because you have the best ingredients available. That includes Salem, Kinmundy, Vandalia, Flora as well. And I know a lot of you watch on the app, so I'm keeping you posted. We will be keeping you posted. Even with the Olympics, we'll be on the app here if we have any problems. Now, as we look from, say, Jefferson County on the Illinois side, go back to Breeze and Carlisle, your threat remains the same. This is Category 2 of 5 from the Storm Prediction Center. And same thing goes from St. Louis all the way to the rest of the area. And you're in that Category 1 of 5, simply because I think as we start to watch this line of storms ahead of this warm front develop and strengthen, you may run into some smaller hail here at this point. But for here in these locations, these are the areas that may see a rotating storm or two, especially the further east out of our area that you get. Those are the spots that we're watching specifically. Now let's take it out on a big picture, and I want to show you this entire system here. Because as we look at where the core of this is, right around 35 here from Kansas City all the way to Wichita, south of Topeka, right here. This is where the core of this low is, and we're also looking at this warm front lifting north. That's where the storms are developing ahead of that. And that's where I want to take you right now and show you what's happening, because nothing too significant. I have looked at a few lightning strikes here over the last 15 minutes or so, and there are a few of them, right? So this is important because scattered showers, nothing severe. We're not expecting any of this to be severe at this point, but purely from a standpoint of what's going on at this hour, if you want to talk about the leading edge of where some of this is, maybe some of this is evaporating. It's not out of the question 100%, but I want to point out what's happening here as we kind of track this for you here over the next several hours. Leading edge of this here, I would say, is going to work its way closer to Union, New Melle, as we start to see that finally reach the surface. You're looking at some of this here from Union to Washington, 9:15, 9:20. 943 in Pacific. These are the areas that I think are going to see some light to moderate rain, maybe a rumble of thunder. I'm not expecting severe weather from this, but what I will say is as this continues to push off to the east and northeast, that's where we're going to see things get a little bit more active as it gets into those more favorable ingredients, and it'll take some time to do so. Futurecast picks this up pretty well the next half an hour. Now, this is where we are at 10:30. Same looking thing, right? This pushes through the Missouri side, areas where there's less favorable ingredients. This dry air that's still in place, 40s, 50s, that doesn't scream severe weather to you, nor should it. But as that warm front lifts north, and along that, you're starting to see a few of these storms that develop. And this is the most recent run of Futurecast. This has just come in. And you're starting to see where a few of these storms may develop from Edwardsville into Salem and Flora. Watch once they get out of the area, right? This is just one look at Futurecast. This may be how this sets up, maybe not. But I really think from our conditions and the way we've seen things, this is what it looks like. Look how more aggressive this gets, right? You're seeing this on the heavier side. This is going into a more favorable environment, and as it's along this warm front, that's where some of those storms could produce some larger hail and rotate those areas off to the northeast. And then look to the south, low 70s, mid to upper 60s. This pushes out of the area, and then we're going to see that dry air for everybody, and that kills our severe weather threat. We have no problems anymore, right? So the same thing goes for the next few hours. As we have talked about for days, Chief Meteorologist Scott Connell at night, Meteorologist Lance Blocker talking about the highest threat area for isolated severe storms, same spots that the Storm Prediction Center has just highlighted and expanded in that enhanced risk, right? So that's if we're going to get that today, and this is still an if, that's the case, right? This is east of St. Louis, isolated strong to severe storms. I really think the window is from 11 to 4 because we're going to watch those storms and that line continue to push our way and then up here as we watch that area specifically. So stay up to date on the 5 on your side app. We'll keep you posted. When you look at the dew point this afternoon, same kind of thing, right? Here's where the moisture is. That's where the core of the threat is. But watch how quickly that dry air rushes in. Now these numbers are cut in half. You see that in the St. Louis area. But the dry air and gusty winds is going to bring in rapid low humidity. And if you're thinking about burning something, I know there was some sort of burning going on yesterday. I saw in the Franklin County area is a pretty good plume of smoke. You're going to deal with that because watch this wind shift by this evening. We have a west-southwest wind, gusts over 30, and it's going to bring in dry air. And overnight, you're going to see that wind bring in a lot of dry air. Here's where we are the next 7 days. As we talk about temps in the low 70s today, and one thing you'll see absent is a weather impact alert day. One of the reasons for it, as we continue to talk about, is the dry air rushing in. It limits your development. Now, severe storm development still could be possible. It's just very isolated, in my opinion. Now, we'll see how things go over the next couple of hours, but the way things are set up, that's what it looks like for 95% of our area is staying severe weather free, and really, you could almost make an argument rain free in some cases. Now, it will be cool after that. I mean, I'll tell you what, and there's the 7-day forecast, and here's the next 10 days. It does get warmer, but you're going to see temperatures in the mid to upper 50s, low 60s, slight chances for rain after that. It feels more like February as we end this month and start March.